Good morning, everyone. I am Mrs. Revati Devi Mathur, in charge, Villamari Degree College. On behalf of Villamari Degree College for Women, I welcome you all to the national webinar. Villamari Degree College for Women helps students immerse themselves in a curriculum with both technical knowledge and creativity. Our conservatory structure allows students to select industry-focused specialization based on their individual interests and facilitates cognitive and effective student learning. It bridges the gap between theory and practice, which is why we take pride in announcing the distinction the college has received as the second best college in Telangana. The mission of Villamari is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world and to generate ideas that advance leadership practice. And for this remarkable opportunity, we wish to thank our pioneer, beloved founder, director, Dr. Philomena Ma'am, who is a debonair and indeed a virtuoso, who is guiding us ever after, leaving no stone unturned to ensure academic excellence. Today, we are delighted and honored to host the national webinar on application of tools and techniques in research methodology, research writing, and publication, hosted by the IQAC of Villamari Degree College for Women. We are pleased that today we have delegates from across the country to attend the webinar. I thank you all for taking time out and being here today for the webinar. I realize
She's
that
talking,
you are
I'm not able to hear.
to the session that will follow. The webinar is principally designed to keep ourselves informed about the skills required in research, thereby waking up the scholar hidden in all of us. I wish you all a very fruitful and a productive session. Thank you. I now request Mrs. Athiya Nusrat, IQAC Coordinator, Villamari Degree College, to take over the proceedings of the webinar. Thank you. I request Athiya to take it forward from here. Over to you,
Thank you,
Athiya.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Remember those times when we were always complaining of our hectic work schedules and juggling tasks and maintaining work-life balance? No doubt, this virus has created a havoc worldwide. It has robbed us of many pleasures, but for some academic writers, it's a rare and unexpected gift. It was an abrupt drift from our busy schedules, and what do we get? A scant gesture to salvage the semester and resort to teaching and learning online, besides having cluttered mailboxes and messages. But here, the top priority being our physical and emotional well being. It is crucial to remember that we are still writers and we can untap our scholarly wisdom and validate our writing. Today, we shall have a proper regime for research writing and its requisites, right from the motivation and willingness to write to data collection and findings using different tools and techniques to the final threshold of publication. Research is an organized method of keeping you reasonably dissatisfied with what you have. It is time that we behave like high performing intellectuals and pump out high quality research amidst this political and social upheavals of our lifetime. Research is nothing but a state of mind, a friendly, welcoming attitude towards change, going to look for a change instead of waiting for it to come. Today, we look forward for an enriching session that will reveal all the nuances of research in academics. Looking forward to an insight-driven session, I extend my cordial welcome to a facilitator with an excellent pedagogical skills who continues to impart knowledge with the same enthusiasm and energy for over 2 decades now, Dr. A. Patrick. Masters in Commerce and Business Administration, he completed his Bachelor of Christian Studies from Serampore, West Bengal. He has designed several MOOC courses through Swayam and has been the resource person for Ambedkar Open University and many other colleges in Hyderabad. He was also the additional control of examination BCom branch besides holding expertise in corporate training in many colleges. This is not an exhaustive list. Dr. Patrick also served as an lecturer in Arba Minch University, Ethiopia, under United Nations Development Programme. He also had the privilege of being the guest faculty for many colleges while attending many seminars on national and international level. He has also authored many books on business organization and quantitative techniques. He has been lauded with the Best Commerce Faculty Award IPA in the year 2009. Dr. Patrick is currently serving as an assistant professor, Usmania University College of Commerce and Business Management, and joint director of admissions, Usmania University. A delightful welcome to you, sir. But before we begin the session, a humble reminder to all the attendees here that your queries and doubts will be addressed after the session ends. Therefore, please drop your questions in the chat box provided. Also, to conserve the bandwidth and for smooth live streaming, please ensure that your videos are disabled and you are on mute mode. Let's get started for a power-packed session here. It's over to you, Dr. Patrick.
Do I start, Ma? Hello.
Yes, sir, you may begin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Morning, everyone. Nice to be in your midst there. And we're all on time. And these days, there are a lot of webinars being announced by various colleges across the country and abroad. And I find one spree going on. The thing is, people are jostling for collecting certificates. And, what you know, what is important is what you do with what you know. So there may be different people presenting things about research from different perspectives. I really liked the introduction given by Atya ma'am. And first things first, I got to thank Revati Devi Mathur ma'am, her entire team of IQAC, and my old student, Mr. Naveen, and their team of Chandrasekhar, Atya ma'am, Saida, and all who had gone about with working behind the screen and trying to coordinate, creating the Telegram and WhatsApp group, trying to pass on the messages and other things there. It's really nice that I'm being asked to go about with speaking or sharing my experience through my journey of research and how I go about with guiding my students and the kind of things that I have learned in my journey of research there. And it's something what Athiya just said a little while ago, where he said it's more about a walk of life, change, and a lot of other words that she has gone about with using and trying to introduce. And I got to tell that it is one of the nice introductions that have come in the recent past. People have this habit of having their own pronunciations, adding their own things there. But I think all in all, this is one nice thing that is there. And time and again, the college authorities and the coordinators or the organizers have reminded us as to what are the etiquettes of this particular thing there, as to how do we work out. So what I do is, okay. Now, I would start with the very first slide that is there. Somebody was there who was helping me, whether it's Atya ma'am or someone. I think my PPT is visible now. Somebody will have to confirm.
Yes,
Is the
sir.
PPT
Yes,
visible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
We can see your PPT.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll go unhindered from this point of time there. And they've said that I only would request you all, would get into this habit of multitasking. The thing is, people want to let know everybody that they are here, they've arrived, good morning, and kind of things. There, you're welcome to do so when your fingers are itching to do. But the thing is, people vary in their learning styles. You are visual type, you are auditory type, you are
तो
kinesthetic
देखे
type.
all the buses बोल के
Okay. So the thing is, when I was interacting with my old student who's a faculty now at Villa Mary College, Mr. Naveen, we were trying to figure out, there are a lot of these webinars that are happening these days on research, on SPSS, on the choice of the tools that you use for analysis and other things there. Then I said, why don't you go about with figuring out as to how we would go about with adding value? What are the other things? Probably in the recent past before this lockdown, we had two workshops that were conducted at Usmania University. One was purely on theory there, and another one was trying to get into SPSS, e-views, and other things there. Now, I would go about with giving you an overview with the time that is given to me to speak to you as to what are the foundations of research, what is this problem identification and formulation. Most of the people falter at this stage as to what is problem identification and formulation there. Because it's always believed that a problem well understood is half solved. So when you don't know what the problem is, you go about it beating around the bush there, and you don't get anything in return. So when you know what the problem, sometimes when we do our research, let us say it's to do with the PhD work there, you are given a stipulated time of 4 years. And I'll tell you, the serious work, at least to do with writing or synthesizing and other things come in the last 1 year. But the research guides and whoever is there, they go about telling us that you've got to spend a lot of time in understanding what the problem is, right? So the thing is, they expect you to do a lot of literature review. They ask you to go about with identifying what is already done, what is to be done, how do you go about with conceptualizing it in the form of gaps, how do you go about with converting these gaps into objectives, find the right kind of tools to go about with meeting the requirements of the gaps in terms of objectives and hypotheses, and then you do the analysis and other things. So the thing is, the starting point is more about the problem identification and formulation there. And we will spend a little time, before I even get in, what I want you to do is there are a lot of books that are there in the market which talks about market research there. And I would wish that there is one book which is called as Naresh Malhotra, which is more about market research there. So I want you to go about with looking at it. I'm not here telling specifically for the specialization area of marketing alone there, but the tools that are being described or explained in this textbook, which is called as Marketing Research by Naresh Malhotra, it would even help you in finance, HR, or any other area of research that you're doing. And I'll tell you one thing there, research is a word which is common to all the areas, be it medicine, be it engineering, social sciences, life sciences, physical sciences there. The basics are the same there. So that is something which I have to go about with telling you. So when it comes to the methods part of it there, I wish that you spend some quality time understanding it from that Naresh Malhotra. I'll be able to speak the ingredients which go into what a research design is all about. And what are the tools which you should be acquainted with? Most often, where researchers falter is how do you go about with giving an appropriate bibliography references? How do you organize your work? We do it in a very cluttered way. We get a newspaper clipping, or we may get something from a journal, something from let us say, a periodical or from a lecture. We go about gathering sources. Now you need some tools to go about with being organized and see that you do your research in a timely way. So we'll talk about certain tools which are relevant with that. And today, I wish that I see that there were some PhD completed members also are participating in it. But I'm more for the people who are young and who are for research, who are very serious about it there. I have to request you, keep a tab on the things that happen on the UGC website. Make it a habit to go about with submitting proposals, be it minor, major, and other things. There's a lot of funding which is going on there, and you'll have to go about tapping it. The rules are different when it comes for the government colleges, affiliated colleges, constituent colleges, and other things there. You can seek guidance and advice from others who are seasoned teachers who have done the major and minor research project. More than anything, today, what happens is when you are getting a topic registered, I mean, Shod Ganga is one wherein all the completed PhD theses are being uploaded there. So that is one part of it. But today, if you have gone about with presenting, let's say if you're doing a PhD, first is you get eligibility to do a PhD. That is probably they vary from university to university, but in our place, probably what we do is we see whether you're qualified your JRF, your NET exam, or your SET exam. So after that, you go about with getting into the process of admission. And once you're admitted, you present a synopsis. It's very kind of a crude document that you have. You're not very sure as to whether the same topic you would be working in other things, but to assess whether you have a potential for research and other things there, they ask you to present a synopsis. And you go about with getting into the relationship with your guide, with your co-scholars, acquainting yourself with what exactly, there is a lot of hype that is created. But I'll tell you, once you get into it, in the end, you'll say, oh, is this what is called a research kind of a thing? So what happens is when you get yourself acquainted with the do's and don'ts and other things there, then you have to take the part 1 exam, which is into 2 things there, where you write about research methodology and your broad area that you've selected. And then you go about with making a presentation, which is called the research design presentation. And there is a format in which you go about the presenting. People ask you about your methodology. People ask you the do's and don'ts of your work there. They go about it giving you suggestions. Probably you can modify your objectives. A lot of those things that are there. And remember one thing, as long as you're doing PhD there, you've got to be humble, you've got to be learnable, you've got to be teachable, and you've got to be inquisitive. The advice is given by people, you've got to be cautious. And remember one thing there, when some elders or teachers are trying to give a good thought to it there, criticism is not bad. People are trying to insult you, belittle you, or put you low. They're trying to give you constructive criticism in the sense that they're trying to help you out to go about with making the work better. So heed to advices there and apply yourselves also. Now there is a saying that you have in Hindi that says "Sabka suno apna karo." Now, I don't believe in that part. It's always said that 2 heads are better than 1. So you'll have to go about with figuring out. And if you believe what you're doing is right, probably most often it happens to be like frog in a well kind of a thing there. Attitudinal problems have come across many people, brilliant guys, geniuses, top-notch JRFs that are there. But because of their attitude that is there, I mean, they end up giving up. They said, no, I can't adjust to the system. I can't work it. This is not the way I would like to do it. And they give up. They ruin themselves. And it's very late that they realize somebody who are below average and average make it much better than them when it comes to careers in research. So the thing is, humility is one very high required quality that you would appreciate when it comes to doing research there. So when I was talking about this IPRs and other things there, so you have this UGC's norms now that once you get your research design done, you got to submit and get it registered with them. Because tomorrow, if somebody else claims that this is the same area I'm doing, I mean, there could be issues related with patents and copyrights and other things that are there. So you've got to be vigilant about this IPRs. And you need certain thinking skills that are there. We all think differently. I really love this quote by Swami Vivekananda, where he says, it's your thought which makes your words, it's your words which makes your action, it's your action which makes your habit which makes your character, it's your character which makes your destiny. So everything begins with thinking. And ultimately, whether you get awarded for your degree or not, it's all to do with what you put it on the paper. That is where you call it as the thesis, the dissertation, or the project report that you have. But I'll tell you, 3/4 or majority of the work happens in your mind. So the thing is, you need to really fine tune. You need to spend quality time and understanding whether your thinking is right or wrong. Now, these days, for the past 2 years, I'm blessed with an opportunity to interact with students at NIFT, that is National Institute of Fashion Technology. Now, I'm given one paper there. The paper is called Critical Thinking. Now, critical thinking doesn't mean that you go about with criticizing somebody. It doesn't mean that you go about with finding fault with somebody, but it is to do with you become your own critic. You're trying to find what is called as the mistakes that are there or flaws that are there in your own decision-making process or your thought process that you have there. So this is something that is very important. You can spend quality time. Normally, I take a little over 36 hours trying to teach and evaluate them into 3 different modes of exams there. I'll speak a little later when it comes to what is this thinking and focus on what is critical thinking and why is it important from research. And when you have to go about with submitting your research papers there, what are the guidelines that are to be followed? We'll go about looking at it. And this is very important. See, when you're doing your research there, you need to go about with looking at getting your publications done. There is one cliche that we use in research, whether you publish or you perish. And I've seen people, research, they're qualified net exam, set exam, they're very complicit. And these days we get hundreds of applications that are there, and there are very few seats which are there in PhD. And when we go about with working out a merit list, we see your publications, we see your percentages of marks that you got in your degree, your PG, and whether you're a JRF, you get a better score, you get net set. Net is more preferred over a set exam there. So if you have publications, that goes about with adding marks. If it is a joint paper, if it is a single paper, so you'll have to get into the habit of getting the papers published. So even with publications there's a lot of hype that is created. I mean, these days people talk about the care list of journals from UGC, and people look for Scopus journals there. Now, every journal has got its own requirement. Now you need to fine tune yourself to their requirements. I'm not asking you to compromise, but fine tune yourself and strive. And the pace at which I see the present day scholars publishing articles and publications that are there, they are more after numbers. It's not quality, but it's more after numbers. And they're more into what is called as the aspect of what is known as cut, copy, paste culture that is there. But today, let me tell you, there is a lot that is done about what is known as the plagiarism test that is done, and you can go about with testing yourself before you set it there. So that is something which you'll have to focus on. So these things will go one by one. Now, before I even get into, people may talk about a lot of things. Normally, what I tend to do is I split the word research into 2 things. That is the prefix re and search. Now look at the places where we use the prefix of re. We say repetitive, so regain, rejuvenate. So when you're doing something again and again, we have this 2-lettered prefix which is called as re, and searching it, right? Now I always tell it, you need an inquisitive mind. You got a question. There have been millions of people who have seen apples falling to the ground, but there was one person who went about with questioning the reason why doesn't the apple go up. Now this was Sir Isaac Newton. When he was sitting under a tree, apple hits him, gives a nasty blow on his head. Probably it was an impulsive reaction wherein it hurt, and he says that why did it not go up and why did it land on my head? And probably at that time, if he has asked somebody why does it happen, people said you're foolish. What kind of a question is it? This is nature. You just got to go about with looking at it. These are laws of nature, people have said. But he didn't give up there. He went about with trying to figure out as to why things fall. There was no textbooks and other things at that point of time there. So it is to do with, I'll tell you this way, the way we go about with learning. The word education comes from a Greek word which is called educatare, educatare, which means that you draw out of a person. Now, what normally we do under the classroom parlance is we dump into a person. Now, I also quote Swami Vivekananda. When somebody asked him what is education, he said, it is where you go about with driving a person when things manifest to an higher level, which is already existing in man. So you're involved with something. What education goes about with shaping you and molding you, it takes you to a higher level that you have. But I also look at what Swami Vivekananda says once when he said about thinking. He says man's mind is like a restless monkey. It goes about going from one branch to the other that is there. So you have to learn to be disciplined, to be controlled, to be focused when you do what is called as research. So when it comes with the aspect that you have there, I was trying to tell that there are 2 approaches that you have. One is called as an inside-out approach, and another is called as an outside-in approach. Now, in the case of Isaac Newton, if I go about looking at, he would go about with looking at that point, there was no books in physics and other things talking about the laws of motion, first law, second law, third law, and other things there. It is working within, which has brought those things out, and that has become physics today for us. Even in the case of Galileo, I still recollect that he was put in a prison, wherein he went about with saying that the sun is the center of the solar system and Earth and the other planets revolve around the sun. The imposition given to him is he had to tell Earth is the center and sun and the other planets revolve around the Earth. And 400 years after his death, the church that was there had given a certificate to tell that Galileo was right and church was wrong. So these are things which make us believe that there are things which are already there, but only thing is we go about with applying ourselves, whatever thing that we have learned, go about with putting into application and get things to the fore. That is what is research all about. Now here I found in one of the literatures, probably in an IGNO material to motivate students to study. Now they said what is research is, it is a rational way of thinking, rationality. Now here you are trying to go about with finding a relationship between what is the cause and what is the effect. So that is where you talk about being rational. Some people are called as rationalists. Now they don't believe in superstitions. For them, religion, spirituality is another realm. So they believe if something can be proved, I accept it. If it can't be proved, then that is not rational to me. But we talk about rationality in research as well there. And you have what is called as expertise, and you work out what is called as an exhaustive treatment. You search, and basically, if there is a question, which we call it as a research question, then there is research. When there is no question to address there, there's nothing that you got to search, and there is no solution that you're finding. That doesn't constitute what is called as research. You're trying to work with, was it exactness? Now, this would sometimes vary. When you talk about life sciences there, they are very precise, but when it comes to social sciences, probably we talk about approximation. You do analysis, you're trying to figure out relationship between facts. I'll come to this word again, but it requires what is called as eye for details. When you talk about critical observation, there are times what you observe, others don't go about it observing. And research requires what is called as careful planning. Probably I missed out on the spelling. It requires what is called as constructive attitude. It requires condensed generalization. This is what I was trying to tell a little while when I began. Attitude is very important. I really love reading those books and speaking on John Maxwell, where he said, if you want to go about with making big in life, what determines your altitudes is your attitude. So the approach that you have is very important, and it is not destructive. Get the word right. It talks about being constructive. And people have dubious ways of making it. There is one funny way that I have come across. One very famous teacher from Xavier's Institute was also an alumni teacher at Usmania University. Now he went about saying in Telugu, when it comes to the word thesis, I know there are people from various other parts of the country attending this webinar, but the thing is, the word thesis, if you look at it, it's got a very funny connotation in Telugu, where they say "tisi rasadani," thesis hunter. It's like, if I have to put it in a crude way, it's more about cut, copy, paste kind of a thing. You don't acknowledge the original person there, the ones who have actually contributed. You claim others' ideas to be yours. So this is something where we go about telling that you need honesty and you need to work hard. There is no substitutes for that at all. Probably you talk about smart work and a lot of other things there, but you have a grind. I still remember very old thing when I was trying to get admission into PhD. I had a professor at the university here, Augustine sir, and my guide, Professor H. Venkateshwarlu, and my teacher, Professor Rachalapathi, who have molded me into research, teaching, and other things there. There were a few questions with which Professor Venkateshwarlu asked me. One is he said, do you know how to drive a two-wheeler? I said, yes, sir. I was just starting that. He said, do you know how to type? He said, you need hands very fast on the typewriter. The present day generation is all more into texting. They are more thumb friendly than the fingers friendly kind of a thing there. But the thing is, I said, yes, I have learned typing, I've passed my higher. Then he said, you would do well. And beside him, there was Professor Augustine, who was also his friend there. He said, you have two qualities. One is you know how to drive, you know how to type, but you need another quality there. When you want to embark on research there, buy a huge quantity of Fevicol. It sounds funny, but he said, you know what? You need to put it to the chair, get your bottom placed on it, get yourself glued, stuck to the chair, and do a lot of desk work. Now, if you spend the quality time on the desk, then you're going to come out with a very good outcome. But when you are very switchy kind of a character, where you can't focus and work there, work hard, pour in hours of labor, then you are unfit for research. Now, these are the words what I had got. I would call it as pearls of wisdom, which I got from my senior teachers, which I'm sharing with you. Now let me proceed with this foundation of research. What I've done is, I said in the beginning, I tried telling as to the framework with which I'm going to speak with you there. This is something which Naveen and his team had presented, Revati ma'am and others. So the first thing that we come across is, how often have you come across this cliche, which says, those who can do, those who can't teach. This is a very huge slur or an insult that we come across in the teaching community. Now, I've heard about the way they respect teaching in Japan, in New Zealand, and some of these European Union countries. I'll have to take an example in Germany. There are two CEOs who are trying to sit on a negotiation table and to figure out whether they go ahead with the business deal or not. And when they are in a fix, they are in a deadlock. They don't know how to proceed ahead. You know what they do? They say, let's go to that university professor. Let us meet him. Let us pour into his wisdom. And whatever he decides, let's bank upon that. You find this very rarely happening in India. And here, they go about with accusing the teaching community. They say that teachers are good in what is known as autopsy. Autopsy is to do with, you will do the postmortem and tell the reasons why the death has happened, but you will not go about with preventing the causes for the death. So we have an accusation from the corporate telling us that we are very good with theory, but we are very bad when it comes to the practical part of it. We lack that wisdom to link what is called as theory and practice. They can do case studies, but the thing is, trying to prevent the causes for failure or losses, we are very bad at it, what they say. There is an element of truth also. I don't negate it completely. That is there. I don't find fault with the corporate world as well there. But I would tell something else in the next slide when it comes. This is what I'm trying to tell here is, regrettably, this fairly common saying reflects a society that doesn't understand, appreciate, or value the work of a teacher. Probably today you have more of supply and less of demand, and people go about looking at the teaching community in a very cheap way, but it is up to you if you want to be treated in a valuable way. You add value, the way you get respected depends a lot on you. So I would tell that we got to change this culture of autopsy to getting into biopsy. When somebody has got a cancerous growth, they go about taking a small part of that cancerous growth there, they test it, figure out, and say what level of chemotherapy and other things are required. Now that is where you work on live cells. So if you can do something on that, we talk about live projects and dummy projects, fake and other things that are there, sham work. Now I said something here where I said those who can do, those who can't teach. Now here I say those who can teach, those who can't, find some other less important profession. And I would tell teaching is the highest profession. This is what I want to go about with emphasizing on, to tell you that all other professions get their inputs, are shaped, designed, molded. It's all because of the teaching profession. So here I would tell you, those who can, they teach, but those who can't teach, they go about with finding what is called as less important profession. So teaching is not less important, right? So here it said that this in turn helps us to replace that terribly inaccurate adage that is used with the teachers with what I've quoted here. So there is this teacher in an elementary school who says the teacher research is exhilarating to an educator because it respects their wisdom and gives them an active voice in improving practice through inquiry. Teachers leave their footprints in the problem solving process. There are a lot of watchwords that are there here. I love that word wisdom. I talk about active voice, practice, thorough inquiry, and they leave their footprints. Wow, they are something which are indelible. and they are involved in what is called as problem solving process. So you'll have to look at those watchwords. And then this is something to do with an inquiry circle. Normally what we do is we collect data. Now look at the basic thing that we do in the classroom. As teachers, we go about doing all that rumination of library work, references and other things there, and we carry it to the classroom. We go about with speaking it out, the different modes of teaching that we go about with demonstrating and carry out the job. We share information in the classroom. And then what we go about with looking at is the proof that the students have gone about with assimilating, imbibing, and understanding what we spoke to them. We go about with conducting exams then. So it tests their knowledge levels. And then we go about with giving them marks after the evaluation and assessment. So we are actually figuring out what is called as their knowledge levels. But when corporate comes and goes about with recruiting them, they are not very keen on your percentages. They are keen on a minimal level. But beyond that, what happens is, can I get my PPT going? Someone has messed with my presentation. Okay, I think I'll get it. Am I okay there? I think there was a small disturbance. All right. Someone will have to confirm. Am I
Yes,
with my
sir.
PPT on here?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Yeah. Somebody tried doing a share. I think it got distracted. Please, time and again we had the organizers trying to tell us that you need to follow certain etiquettes there. Right. Let's get going. So what I was trying to tell is, we go about with having students selected in their placements and other things there. And at a later stage, when you conduct an alumni meet and others, the corporate is not keen on the marks, they are keen on the intelligence portion. And I always go about with telling it like when it comes with the not just work on your IQ, but for research and your future, you also require what is called as EQ. That is your emotional quotient. You got to work on your physical quotient, intelligence quotient, your spiritual quotient. You need what is called as one important thing is adversity quotient. There, how do you? I mean, you get something which is very shocking, and how do you go about reacting? Do you get into stress? Do you sulk? How do you go about with reacting? So you need certain things there to work out. But when you conduct an alumni meet for a batch of students, you find all of them were placed, but some of them made it to the top ranks and some are stagnant where they are. What has happened here? Some students were able to carry their application skills to another higher level, which is called as wisdom. Now, that is what happens there. So we collect data, we analyze data, we take action, we share with others there, and we develop what is that thing which is called as awe or wonder. We make the students to go about with thinking, and we put them into this rigor of doing project work and other things. This is what we call it as a normal inquiry cycle. This is something which I've been using over the years there. When I talk about in any research, you have 4 phases. Now, the first one is to do with the observation phase. Second is to do with the hypothesis. Third is to do with experimentation. And fourth is to do with conclusion. So the research cycle has got 4 phases there. Now, you'll have to be a little careful because normally we believe that what we see with our eyes is observation. But I have something to tell that it is a tool through which you receive the stimuli, and it is your pancha indriyas, or it is your 5 senses with which you observe, you process it in your mind, and you attach meaning to it. Now, I don't know if somebody is getting a clue of what I'm talking. I'm actually talking about the process of perception. So when you are observing, you're receiving stimuli, you're processing it in your mind there, you're attaching meaning. This meaning leads to values, beliefs, attitudes. A combination of these values, attitudes, and beliefs is what becomes your behavior. The thing is, the meaning that I attach, I'm not sure whether the way I interpreted it is the same way that others also would interpret it. So I'm in a flux, I'm in a fix, I'm baffled, I'm confused, I'm puzzled. So what I do is I try figuring out whether what I think is in sync with what others think. Now, this is where I go about, we're talking about the word called hypothesis. So hypothesis is to do with a tentative or a temporary conclusion. It is not the final thing. If somebody has done a PhD, I've seen some 7 or 8 people in this group who are PhDs. Now they were awarded because they have submitted something to the university in the form of a book, and that is called as thesis. Thesis is the final word. Hypo is tentative. And normally I take this example when I try teaching to relate with what we have studied in our school days. We say there was this person by name J.J. Thomson. Now what he said is, if in his imagination an atom was something wherein the electrons are scattered just the way the seeds are scattered in a watermelon. And today, if you go about with going to advanced nuclear physics, probably it sounds dumb. But let me tell you, the thought that he has got made people to observe something, criticize, go ahead. Probably there would have been a Niels Bohr, there would have been a Rutherford. We talk about God particles. Not many things have emerged beyond that point. What J.J. Thomson. But his hunch was that the electron, atom is more like the electrons scattered in a watermelon, the way the seeds are scattered. So the thing is, today you talk about protons, nucleus, and other things. And probably I remember the kind of lesson that I got at Little Flower when I was doing my intermediate there. You talk about the orbitals called SPDF and other things there. So there is a different kind of a thing. So today, the kind of knowledge that we have to what we had prehistorical. Now, I would put this hypothesis of 2 types. Now, something what you believe is status quo, doesn't change, remains the same, we call that to be the null hypothesis. And when we challenge the null, or we are trying to figure out that something is against the null, something is against the status quo, now we talk about a directional and non-directional kind of alternate hypothesis. And when we say, when you use neutral words, I'll have to tell it, probably I didn't use it in my PPT here. Now people go about it asking this question, when do I use a one-tailed test and a two-tailed test kind of a thing there? Now, when you're trying to figure out that between 2 situations, you use a neutral word saying that there is no difference, there is no significant difference. You talk about a two-tailed test. But when you would look for what is known as a directional one, when I say there is positive words, let us say that when I drink water from a water filter, probably I'm healthy, and when I don't drink water from a filter, I'm unhealthy. So I'm talking about a positive word that is related to being healthy, or probably talking about improved, better, such kind of words. I talk about a right tail test. We'll come to it a little later. As of now, if I use negative connoting words there, I use a left tail. So this is direction. Now, I know what are my questions of my research there. Now, when I have to do the experimentation part, I do it by 2 things. Now, that is, do I take or collect data from the entire population, synthesize and tell this is what is the conclusion? Or do I work on a certain part of the population, which is called as a sample, and whatever results I get on the sample, I generalize and say it holds good for the entire population. Now, that is where I do in the experimentation part. And whatever conclusion I draw, somebody observes something in it, and the cycle goes about with continuity. That is the reason it is called as a research cycle. Let me give one example, which I often quote. The college where I work, College of Commerce and Business Management, just beside it, our neighboring college is the Law College. Now here, they always hold it in the field of law. The null hypothesis, a person is innocent. Alternate hypothesis, a person is criminal. So normally what we do is, most of the media guys on the news channels, what they do is, they do what is called as trial by media. I get across some vociferous journalists that are there who scream at the top of the voices to make a person feel guilty. But let me tell you, that is trial by media. The person is accused. He's not guilty. Right? Guilt charges are levied against a person. And the code of law says a person is innocent unless and until the guilt charges levied against him or her is proved. So we always hold the premise that a person is innocent. And in the court of law, we have the plaintiff and the defendant. They fight it out, collect circumstantial evidence to prove or to accept or reject whether the person is innocent or not. When you accept the person is innocent, then you leave him scot-free. When you say that he is not innocent, then you go about with saying that he is guilty. That is what we do. So that is how we go about working. Let me take another example. we are doing a lot of research. Probably we're not safeguarding our lives on Earth, and we are talking about planets and other things there. But we have this perennial question which says that whether there is life on Mars. And the null hypothesis says there is no life on Mars. The alternate hypothesis says there is life on Mars, because all the planets revolving around the sun derive their energy from sun. So there is this question, and there was one piece of rock in one of the explorations. They brought it to Earth, and when they broke that rock, they found a fossilized leaf in that rock. So somebody said, if leaf is there, probably tree is there. If tree is there, life is there. And from that, again, the cycle continues. And recently, somebody got some pictures from the planet Mars. And in that picture, they've seen very shapely rocks that are there. So the rocks can get a shape when there is an air medium or a water medium. So when there is air and water, probably there is life on Mars. But till today, it is an inconclusive thing that we are not able to exactly tell whether there is life on Mars or no life on Mars. Still, the cycle is continuing. That is how I put it. And let us say the next thing. So I was trying to tell the word hypothesis is to do with a tentative or a temporary conclusion. I mean, you use a lot of synonymous words with it. You call it the hunch, you call it the guess, or you call it the assumption. But I don't know how you take it this way there. This word, English word assume, if you split it and say that, they say that ASSUME, then if people don't understand the conditions of the same wavelength, they say that you make ass out of you and me. Don't mistake me for that word. Now, I said, what are those types of hypothesis? Null hypothesis. This is not an English word, but it talks about same, existing, prevailing, no change, no impact, kind of a thing. This to do with null. And when we talk about alternate hypothesis, we are talking about something which goes against or contradicts, or something which is proposed in a way which doesn't go well with the null hypothesis. Now, I was talking about what we do in the experimentation phase. Is that there is one which is called as a deductive approach. The other one is called as the inductive approach. So when you use this word deductive approach, what we are saying is we are going from general to particular. That is, we are doing what is called as population or a census study. Now, when you talk about inductive, we are going from particular to general. Now, I have this common example which students keep reading the standardized material for GMAT exams. When it comes to syllogisms or logic and other things there, you have a lot of these things. Now, one of them which says all men are mortal. That is, nobody can escape death. And I love this cricketer. The same example what is quoted in that book also. It says that Brian is a man. So first sentence, all men are mortal. Brian is a man. Then I ask students, what is the interpretation that you make out of these two sentences? They said, Brian is mortal. Wow. You use Venn diagrams, or you've used your logical approach there. So when you say all men are mortal, Brian is a man. Brian is a part of that mankind. So the interpretation is even is a mortal. So what you did here is you're going from general, which belongs to mankind, to a particular individual by name Brian, and you're trying to draw a conclusion. Now, I weigh a little over 90 kgs there. I don't take pride in that. But the thing is, sometimes I land in my health center at Usman University, and I tell the doctor, look, I've got the symptoms of profuse sweating, intermittent eye and low fever, shivering. I believe I got malaria. Why don't you write me this malaria test? He said, wait a minute. You are a PhD with commerce and management. It is me who has to tell you whether you have that disease. Get yourself diagnosed. I will prescribe you the right kind of medicine. So when I get there to that diagnostic center, the guy is ready with a needle to prick into my index finger, a drop of blood, smears it on a few slides, looks it through the microscope, and he goes about by telling me whether I have malaria or not. So this is the single drop of blood with which you are trying to ascertain whether that virus is there in the body, which is around 90 kg. And we use it every day. Now that is where we talk about the inductive approach that we do in the experimentation. Now, where do we get ideas for research? Now, this is very important there. Now, you talk about your personal and professional experience. Now, I would always appreciate teachers that are there. There are different types of presentations that we make in the class. I've seen teachers across in my school, in my +2, in my degree, and in my master's. And I found an approach earlier, school, +2, and degree there. The teachers get quite bugged up, frustrated, irritated. If you ask them questions in between, they said, my flow goes. Wait, at the end of the class, ask my question. Because I tell you, most often they come with canned presentations. We talk about salesmen. He says, good morning, ma'am, I've come to sell this. You stop him somewhere, you go to good morning, ma'am, or good morning, sir. So the thing is, what I'm talking about professional experiences, someone who goes about with fine tuning is that quality questions which comes from students in the classroom. They are potential seeds for research. Or it could be your own personal understanding. When you read, when you analyze, I'll tell you, I've come across different approaches that people go about teaching what a PRS is. I've come across teachers who mug up the performers and tell the students, you mug this three performers and put it in the paper. In the exam, you read the question, mug it, put it, get the answer. But I've come across teachers, like I've read S.N. Maheshwari and other books. It tells you a very logical thing. And I'll tell you, you wake me in the middle of the night at any part of the day there, I can bet, I'm not overconfident, but I can bet that I won't go wrong with my BRS. Now, what I'm trying to tell is, it's my personal and professional experience. So the thing is, when you practice, you come across new ways of doing things. So this can add to research. And I was trying to tell, in teaching, what we tend to do is we teach students how to swim without water. So we are trying to give them theoretical inputs, and in practice things are different. But if we can make, what exactly is a project work that we give to our students around them? It is nothing but we are trying to tell them, how do you go about with relating? How do you go about with connecting? Or how do you bridge the gap that exists between theory and practice? And I would tell one thing. There are two aspects what I told you: literature and media. Now, I would always hold, wherever I speak on research, I tell them, especially to do with business studies, be it a BCom or BBA or BMS or an MBA or an MCom kind of courses there, I always insist that if you're not reading a business paper, you're no better than a criminal. Mark those words, what I'm saying. I said, if you don't read business papers, you're no better than a criminal. Now, I tell you what I did before I started this course there. I believe that I'm using my time productively. Today is Wednesday, but I think I've done near about 4 webinars in this week, and other 3 to follow the coming. I'm not blowing my trumpet, but to tell you a few things that I started my day by reading newspapers, preparing for this presentation, reviewing it, and I took 2 quizzes in the morning there. One was from AMS College on brand, and one more was from IMC College, probably on statistics there. The thing is, keep yourself engaged. Keep on feeding the right food for thought in your mind. So keep, when I read papers, yesterday I had to do a program on Atmanirbhar Abhiyan mission. There. Now, where do I get my inputs for it? Now, it comes from the media. It comes by some critical thinking that I have to do, probably by browsing or reading papers and getting the opinions of experts and other things there. So if I have to write a paper, now make a comparison between what kind of stimulus packages were worked out in other countries like America, Japan, Germany, UK. How is India different? When they said it is a 10% of the GDP and it is 20 lakh crore or near about 21 lakh crore project there, I'm trying to figure out, today there is a very good figure which is worked out in the paper. They said they were found about 12 agencies, and they say what is being projected and what is reality, there is a gap. They say all of them claim that it is not 10% of the GDP, but it hovers around 1 to 2%. So I want to figure out whether it is true. I want to know whether the kind of measures that are taken, whether it's the demand side measures or the supply side measures, where do I get to speak on all that? That is from the media. Now, another thing that is there is when you zero down on the topic there, the greatest invention that we come across is to do with a wheel. Greatest invention known to mankind. All the civilizations had a thorough change once the wheel was changed. Why do you do literature review is, the thing is, there is a lot of duplication that happens in knowledge. So when students pursue their research, we tell them, do some critical reading. Read, let us say, a little over 400, 500 or 100 or 50 readings on your topic. I don't think any work is pioneering. There could be connected works that are there. So go about with doing a lot of literature review. And I also tell the ones that are attending, when you read anyone's research paper, there is a structure that you have. Probably it begins with an introduction, the title, the author's name, the abstract, the keywords, the introduction, the research methodology, analysis, interpretations, findings, suggestions, recommendations, scope for further research, limitations, bibliography, and references. Now, this is a typical structure of a research paper. But when it comes to that scope for further research and limitations, I tell you, your focus should be on that. Let me tell you, when I was doing my research in the area of CRM, that is customer relationship management, almost all the literature went about with telling that it is always seen from the perspective of the seller or from the perspective of the manufacturer. They said there are very few studies that are there which goes about with looking at it from the consumer's point of view. So when I had this being worked out, I worked out on the title of Customer Relationship Management, a dyadic exploration in select banks. So when I said dyadic, what I meant was, when you talk about relationship, it is not parasitic. You don't look at it only from a supplier or a manufacturer's point of view. It is symbiotic. So you also look at it from the consumer's point of view. So I had to go about with figuring out studies, working on the questionnaire. I took what is called as the public sector, private and foreign banks. And God's wish that I had been to Ethiopia for 2 years, worked in Arvamanch University. So I took a similar kind of data there, came back here, and I did the analysis, made a comparison between these and presented it. And that is how I was awarded. I'm not blowing my trumpet, but the thing what I'm trying to tell you is, when you do literature review, you arrive at what is called as gaps in previous research. Now, you always substantiate the need and the importance of your research based on your gaps. If somebody goes about it asking you, what is new about your work? It is a stalemate. The same title, many have done it before. What is that you have added to the field of knowledge? What is your contribution? So this is something which is to do with the genesis of your research. So literature review, mark me, is the most important element when it comes to the research product. So that is where you condense the reasons why you do research, and you figure out. And another thing, I've come across some of my own colleagues that have joined later who said, sir, and I remember a lady who went about with collecting data on banks. It was a bit sensitive, and she aggravated the bank by applying even an RTI. And I tell you, if you don't get data, why don't you change the objective? And I tell you, the young ones are little cleverer these days there, unlike what we were there in the earlier generation. Today, they collect the data, based on the data, they frame the objectives. Now, we had a different approach earlier. We should take a topic, do the literature, and figure out the gaps, then work out the objectives, then work out the hypothesis, then design the tools for collection of data, analysis, and other things there. But I still believe the older method works out well. Now, when I'm talking about this literature and media, this is what I'm trying to tell you. There are not many resources on literature these days, such as books, journals, articles, newspapers. And my thing is, please get into the habit of reading a Mint, a Business Standard, a Business Line, an Economic Times. Now, these are things which will provoke you to think. And I tell you, when you get into the classroom to teach also, what would happen is your flow and how do you connect things. Because when you go about taking things, what is there in the textbook, and just vomit it in the class there, how different are you from a student? Even he can read to get the same thing. You are there to go about with giving insights. You are there to go about with giving what is called as application skills there. So here what I'm trying to do is, you are trying to go about with searching, reading literature that is possible. Now, this is what I was trying to draw your attention to. You encounter gaps in information, knowledge, and problems which are there currently for which there is no solution. So they may provide you good basis or insights for doing a research. And we're also flooded with information presented by media that is there in the television. So we are all prone to watching a lot of serials. I don't know how many of you all are looking for an NDTV profit, or let us say someone looks at CNBC, someone looks at Bloomberg. Now you got to go about the subscribing, you got to read, and probably there is a lot available on Telegram and WhatsApp groups also there. We are there at a lot of chat, but if you can focus, I'll tell you, you have a remarkable wealth of information which is there at your disposal. All it requires is for you to work upon it. Now, I just run through a few points which says, why is research important in teaching profession? They say research in an environment, it's indeed the best, and it goes about with being accorded with the highest degree and the way they respect you in the academic circles around there. And if a teacher wants to be effective, at this point, I'll have to tell out the two words which my teacher had taught me when I was doing my master's. Two English words. One is efficiency and one is effectiveness. Efficiency is doing right things, and effectiveness is doing right things in a right way. Now, believe me, you can be efficient, but you may be or you may not be effective. So here I want to draw your attention to tell you that teachers want to be effective, and teachers, educators need to engage with research, keep up their date with recent academic developments, keeping yourself updated, abreast in the subject or overall way that you impart your knowledge around. And teacher educators, basically that is that not just to do with education department there, they have the capacity to motivate, confide, and there are a lot of opportunities to engage with research. And research cannot just stop after the initial teacher education there, but it should be sustained throughout their careers. So that inquiry, when I started with an inquiry circle, then the research cycle, it should be embedded in the professional lives of teachers. We call it B schools or whatever, and becomes a normal way of teaching and learning. And today, most of the B schools that are there are into consulting. When you talk of the top-notch IIMs and other B schools that are there, so you've got to go about with getting more practical. And then we are trying to still get into what is this problem identification and formulation. I told you the sources that are there, whether you get it from newspapers, media, your profession, and various other sources, what I told in my previous slides. Now, research problem is a question that a researcher wants to answer, or a problem that the researcher wants to solve. The research problem is a situation that causes the researcher to feel apprehensive. You're not comfortable. You're confused. You're ill at ease. That is something which provokes you to what is called as research then. So please mark these words again. It says research problem is that situation that causes the researcher to feel nervous. You're uneasy. You're apprehensive. I mean, you're shook up with your foundations of knowledge levels there. You're confused. You're ill at ease. Now, this is something which should be a driving force to make yourself to come out of that apprehensions, to come crystal clear out of that confusion and be at ease with yourself then. And then what we do is in identification formulation of the problem is considered to be the very first step that we have in the research process. It is believed that most of the, I told about the sources of research. From the sources, we are trying to figure out the problem. So we are trying to articulate it. Now, this is where most of us go wrong. I have to tell you that our thinking process is all in our mother tongue. But when we speak it, probably it's in an alien language called English. So most often we come across this problem wherein our thought process is not in sync with what we speak. So the thing is, the gap is where we are not able to articulate our thinking with the right choice of words. So when you are trying to link your thought process, your thinking, your ideas with the right choice of words, that is where you crystallize and you call it as formulation of the research problem. And it is believed that most of the good research studies needs a lot of time for selection of the research problem. This is what I said at the beginning. Why do you require that 3 years period? Why do you require that 4 years period? I mean, I had this fortune to go about with interacting with the professors at ISB. You know what they say? When they come for their publications, they spend 5 years vigorously, 3 years, and for them 1 to 2 years is paper in some of the recognized journals. So this is what you go about with looking when you say that you'll have to go about with spending a lot of time in selection of the research problem. And I repeat it again, which says that a problem well understood is half solved. So this is where it makes your journey easier. And a research problem, there is one of this researcher who goes about saying, is an interrogative sentence. It's ask questions. Statement that asks the relationship that exists between two or more variables. We'll come to this word variable a little later. What are the components that make up a research problem? There must be an individual or a group which has come with a difficulty. Someone who comes for consulting, another thing, they said this is our issue. It could be a person, it could be an organization. There must be some objective to be attained. That is what's said. The research question will be converted into objectives. The gaps get converted into objectives. And if you want to test the objectives empirically, that is where you do the hypothesis testing. To meet the requirements of the objectives and the hypothesis testing, you do the data collection. And if one wants nothing, you cannot have a problem. So the problem is the genesis. So if you are crystallized on that, there is research when there is a research problem. No problem, no research there. There are alternative means for attaining the objective. So there are different ways of doing it. People, depends on the situation, depends on using the right choice of tools, whether it is qualitative, quantitative kind of thing there. There must remain some doubt in the mind of the researcher with regard to the selection of alternatives. So you'll have to figure out, this is where you're in doubt there. This is where the role of the guide comes into existence. You may believe what you're doing is right. The guide is not there to write your thesis. The guide is not there to dictate a thesis. The guide is not there to produce the research work. He is your facilitator. He would tell you when you're in a doubt in your mind there, to tell you whether you're on the right track or not. This is what happens there. So you must, there must be some kind of an environment where there is difficulty pertaining. And, it's quite common that anybody can tell. You can be a nitpicker. You can go about with finding faults. But what is really required is if you go about with finding solutions there. So that is what is the end thing what you have with research. And when you talk about steps in finding or problem identification, we talk about the statement of the problem should be put out in a general way. So research, I remember some of my senior professors saying, it is like a funnel approach. So you go from a very broad part and you get narrower. So it's more about knowing more and more about less and less. So you start with a very general way. You start understanding the nature of the problem. You survey the available literature. Now that is what goes about enabling you to identify the gaps. So the literature provokes you to generate ideas, and probably you discuss with your guide or your co-researchers there. You start rephrasing your research problems into working proposition. That is what is to do with your research problem, or later you work out your objectives and your hypothesis. The next thing is the statement could be in a very general way. Now you're trying to figure out, these are examples where you say, does negative news interest people more than the positive news? Then you're trying to figure out, narrow it down. You do a lot of rumination and rethinking over the problem. Then you start up with saying, does negative news such as robbery, corruption, interest people more than positive news like country's economic growth? How do you define the general? Study the related subject thoroughly. Do some preliminary survey, the pilot survey, and then you go about with zeroing down what the issue is. So when you talk about understanding the nature of the problem, they say the best way to understand the problem is thorough discussion. You need to spend quality time and solitude. Remember what I said about Fevicol and other things a little while ago. So the thing is, you have to talk with yourself. We call it soliloquy. People around you. It's not that you talk aloud there. People say you're mad there. But you do a lot of talking to yourself there, figure out things, and speak with people who are like-minded. Today, there are a lot of forums where you go about with discussing. But be a little careful that your project is registered and there are no issues related with patents and copyrights and somebody infringes and claims your work to be theirs. So you'll have to take a little bit of caution and care and precaution in trying to discuss as well there. So discussion with people who have good knowledge. Now this is where I say when I had to do my research there, wherever it was pertinent with my topic, I used to go about with attending seminars, attend conferences, write papers, get insight. And whoever was the speaker or whoever was the resource person, I would take time, take their contact, write an email to them, call them on phone, ask them whether this is the right approach there, what I'm doing. Do you think this will add value to the field, what I'm trying to propose my study upon? So this is what I used to do. So I expect that when you're a researcher, you need to discuss with people who has got, I always learn this in leadership. You are an average of 5 people that you associate with. So the thing is, your association matters a lot. And in research, it is something that you have to associate with people who are better off than you, and probably that will kickstart you to go about with working in a better way. And then surveying is something you'll have to work on. So survey the research problem, which is already undertaken, or a related problem, through which you are trying to narrow down on the problem. You're trying to identify the research gaps. It gives you new vistas or new ideas in the related areas. So it helps you to figure out what your research design is. And while developing the ideas through discussions always produce what is called as useful information, which helps you in your further decision making. Various new ideas can be developed through such an exercise, and researchers must discuss their problem with their colleagues. So I would usually talk about a research guide and have enough experience in the same area working on the problem. And you can conduct what is called as an experience survey. And you need to rephrase the research problem. So it has to be in operational terms. Now, there's an example. why is productivity of Japan much higher than in India? Now, after the problem has been understood, available literature you have gone through, you have discussed the problem, and you have rephrased your question, rephrased the question. What factors were responsible for the higher labor productivity of Japan's manufacturing industry during the decade of 71 to 80 or till 2020 relative to India's manufacturing industry? So you're trying to come out with a better way of trying to understand the problem. Now, there are some do's and don'ts while selecting the problem. They say that you got to take a path which is not taken by everyone. So most often, if it is a beaten path, you will have to encounter a lot of questions. I have come across students doing projects, consumer satisfaction in bank. They change the bank name, and I find the same project being presented. But that's not the way how you do for PhD or higher level of research there. The subject which is overdone, that is what I'm saying, is a beaten path where there is very little scope. It's very hard to find virgin areas. But the thing is, you go about with trying to balance overdone area, no. So you got to check it out there and don't step on what is called as controversial subjects that are there. I mean, that goes about with inviting trouble to you. And one thing I'll tell you is while doing research, don't get too ambitious. You know, the moment people get a PhD, they throw parties, we have convocations, we have people coming with wacky selfies and photographs. I've seen places where they throw their hats in the air and jump up. It's all okay that, you know, you've gone through the struggle of 3 or 4 years and you've come for that wacky shot that you have there. But I tell people there, your actual research starts the day you're declared a PhD. Because till then, you're under some constraints, you're under some rules and regulations, you're under the control of your guide. Sometimes you're not given freedom. So the thing is, first is you get your PhD, then you start exploring. You don't have any constraints at the later stage then. So you'll have to be very clear about your research question, and it should be very focused. It should not be running into any generalizations. So when it comes to formulation of a problem there, I love this thing. You know, if you look at who has written this book called Jungle Book, which is by Rudyard Kipling, and he says he has got his entire knowledge and wisdom from 6 wise men. And somebody said, tell me who the 6 wise men are. It is to do with the 6 W's that are there, who, where, what, when, and other things there. And the Japanese have went one step ahead, and they said it is to do with the 5 W's and 2 H's there, where it's about how and how much. So when you're formulating and translating or transforming the selected research problem or topic into a scientifically researchable question, you've got to demarcate in these words. That is very essential. And then this is what I was trying to harp on at the beginning also, to tell that a problem well defined is a problem which is half solved. So the thing is, the later part, the journey becomes better when you have a well solved. But when you don't solve your problem, or you have not understood or identified the problem well, you're just banging around the bush and there is no headway at all. So an ill-defined problem may create a lot of hurdles, like you're not sure what kind of data is to be collected, what characteristics of data, what is relevant to be studied, what relations are to be explored, what techniques are to be used for the purpose. So you're all led to confusion there. So when you draw clarity in the problem, you draw clarity on what is to be collected, what is relevant, what is to be explored. So what is useful technique for meeting your purpose and other things there. And what is good about the problem formulation part and other things is formulation of a problem is the first and the most important. That is what we said. And it is like identification of a destination before undertaking a journey. So this goes about with trying to draw a blueprint before, you have a start and you have a finish. So the thing is, this is your starting point. So research problem serves as a foundation for a research study, like a building. You have a plan there, and somebody goes about with working out a blueprint. So this serves that. We'll talk about it again in research design. So if it is well formulated, I look at one slide in the beginning. I've seen a lot of those pictures of Villa Mary College there. I've been umpteen number of times to that college. I see this elevation and the beautiful building of the college there. But I tell you, before Sister Wilhelmina would have started the college there, that would have been some barren land or something there. But you gave this structure. There was somebody who conceptualized the structure in the mind and went about with putting it on the paper. And this is what you call it as the blueprint, as to where the entrance will come, where the library will come, where the lab will come, where the classrooms will come, where the restrooms will be, where the faculty rooms will be. So you have a kind of a blueprint, and it should be well formulated, and you can expect good study to follow when I'm talking about research design and other things there. Now, very crudely, before getting to the next slide, I said you got to develop a title. You need to build a conceptual model. You have to define the objectives. You have to set an investigative questions. You have to formulate hypotheses, get into operational definitions of concepts, and you have to deal with it. These things I speak in detail next. Now I've come to what is called as the steps in research. First and foremost, we talk about problem identification and formulation. That we have stretched it. Now, when it comes to types of research, there are a lot of researches that are there, but my focus is on 2 or 3 methods that are there. There are some researches which are conducted to understand the problem itself. You're trying to throw light on the problem. Let us say that in a country in Africa, which is called as Liberia, it was a very strange case where people are getting boils on their skin, and what they noticed is they ended up dying because of it. It was called the Ebola disease. So the thing is, there is no medicine or vaccine for it. They say prevention is the best cure. You'll have to ensure that you don't get bitten by mosquitoes and other things. Similar kind of a thing, if I look at it in Brazil, carrying mothers delivered babies with small heads, and people asked what happened. They said it is because of a Zika virus. And probably for the past 58 days, we have been troubled by this COVID-19 with lockdown and other things, or the problem is more than 4 months, if I would put it. 4 or 5 months started with December. So the thing is, if I'm trying to throw light on the problem, you're calling it as an exploratory kind of a research. There is another thing which is there, which is called as the descriptive research. In this, what we do is we don't talk about the why part of it, but all other things, who, where, when kind of things. We only describe, just like we say in statistics, it has got descriptive statistics and it has got inferential statistics. So we only describe part of it. There's another thing which we have, which we call it as the explanatory kind of a research there. Now we talk about relationship, or when I figure out a regression formula which is to do with y is equal to a plus bx there, I'm talking about an independent variable x, dependent variable y, I'm talking about slope of the curve b, the y's intercept, I'm talking about relationship, I'm talking about a simple regression formula. But if I look at y is equal to a plus b1 x1 b2 x2 b3 x3, I'm talking about multiple regression up to bn xn. So the thing is, if my research is more about the explanatory part of trying to find or figure out relationship that is there. And there is another type that you have which is called as causal research. I'm trying to establish relationship between the cause and effect part of it. And once I work out with the type of research, I said this blueprint part of it, we'll spend some time on that. And there could be primary and secondary data tools which help you out with data collection and very important step of editing, coding, and tabulation. When it comes for research design, we figure out what our sources of data is. Are you collecting it for the very first time, or it is from an established source? So we are talking about primary and secondary. If data collected by somebody else, if you're fine tuning and molding it to your requirement, you're calling it as secondary. If you're collecting data specific to meet your objectives and your hypothesis, you're calling it as primary. The same data can be primary in somebody's hand and it can be secondary in somebody else's hand. Let us say the government goes about with doing the census enumeration. So they come out with different figures and statistics there. One of them is to do with the birth rate. And if there is a company by name Johnson & Johnson, they are very keen on this number because that gives them impetus to get into what is the pace of production, how do they create their stockpile, their inventory movement. It's all based on the birth rate figure. So the same number in the hands of the government is primary data, and in the hands of Johnson & Johnson is called as secondary data. So I said about sources of data. Then I have to look at, if I'm collecting primary, will I do data collection through sampling or to census? If it is sampling, I'll have to figure out whether I'm doing random sampling or non-random sampling. Quite often I find students messing up. They use the word random, but in fact they're doing what is called as purposive sampling, or they're doing what is called as convenient sampling. That's theory that you need to get acquainted with. Another thing where I find students or researchers going wrong is about the size of the sample. There are a lot of tools that are there. Now let us say if I have to do a chi-square test, it is mandatory that I have a sample size of 50 and above. If I have to do a Z test, I need to have a mandatory sample size of 30 and above. If I have to do a T test, it would range somewhere between 1 to 29. If I have to do an ANOVA, if I have to do any of the non-parametric, there are some science constraints. But when I get into MCOM, MBA, and BBA students projects, and even at PhD level, people say, I've taken 30, I've taken 100. Why 100? There's no justification for it. So there are some websites like Qualtrics. There are some formulae that are there, QUALTRICS, qualtrics.com. There are some formulae which are based on the levels of significance, the accuracy levels that you want, which will figure out what should be the actual size. When you read a Kothari book, which is on research methodology, or when you read Naresh Malhotra, they say that there is something called as finite population and there is something called as infinite population. And when you draw your sources from an infinite population, they said the apt number or the sample size should be 384. I'm not giving everything into it. I want you to read it. Then you'll have to figure out what are your tools of analysis. Okay, let me get to that slide, which is that. Okay. Right, and I'll come to it a little later. When it comes to this thing, first I said the sources of data, sampling, sample size, then tools of analysis. So when I talk about tools of analysis, I'm talking about three things, whether it is univariate, whether it is bivariate, or whether it is multivariate. Do I study the entire set of data and conclude it with some single numbers? Now that is in terms of mean, median, mode, or standard deviation, or variance, a single figure to denote the summary of the entire thing. I call it as univariate. Now, if I say one number is influenced simultaneously by two factors, I call it bivariate. Let's say for a chi-square or for an ANOVA. A little while ago, I said, let's say if I say y is equal to a plus bx, and I would say that x is the amount that I spend on advertisements and y is sales. Now, this would be very wrong to talk or tell that it is only advertisements which lead to sales. Advertisement is a small component of the promotion mix. So when I say there is something to do with advertising, sales promotion, publicity, direct marketing, personal selling, which is called as the promotion mix, then my equation changes to y is equal to a plus b1 x1 b2 x2 till b5 x5. I say 5 components which constitute the promotion mix then. So I am looking at what is called as multi-dimensional scaling, factor analysis, discriminant analysis. So when I talk about more than 2 factors influencing, so I'm trying to figure out with multi-dimensional analysis that I do. Then one very important crux of the research design, not many would do that, is with the word scope. You are trying to delimit your work in 3 things in terms of your geographical boundaries, in boundary in terms of time, and in concept. I always take this example. Now, if I tell an MCOM student or an MBA student that their project work is based on post-purchase dissonance, which is called as cognitive dissonance, I said, see that you study things in and around the topic. If somebody asks you about all the other stages of consumer behavior or factors which influence consumer behavior, you say that your work is related with only cognitive dissonance, which is given by Leon Festinger, and it is not related with any other things that you have there. So you are trying to demarcate your work. And if I say I do consumer behavior studies in Hyderabad, if somebody tells me in Jabalpur it is that way, or in Bidar it is that way, I tell no, it pertains to Hyderabad. So I'm trying to demarcate, especially to do with financial studies, which financial year to which financial year. If somebody asks me something prior to it and something after that, then I say it doesn't pertain to my work. So that is what I go about with looking into this. And this is very important when you talk about the editing, coding, and tabulation part of it there. Now, this is crucial in the sense people, I usually use this acronym used in computer science, elementary school level, GIGO, which is to do with garbage in, garbage out. So, your quality of your analysis and your interpretation depends upon the quality of your data which you collect. So some people go about with giving data, they probably fill it for the sake of filling the questionnaire. They're not very serious about providing the correct kind of data there. So this is where you go about with doing tests. If you read Naresh Malhotra, it talks about reliability, validity, generalizability, and what are the other things? Reliability, validity, generalizability. These are some watchwords that you have there. So you talk about consistency is the other word. So So you go about with checking, there is a tool called Prawn Bank Alpha in SPSS. So you take your entire set of data, it does multiple internal correlations and comes out with a number. If you get something which is beyond 0.7, you say your data is consistent. If your data is consistent, it is reliable. And there are some other tests that you do for generalization and validity and other things there. Now you'll have to figure out this. So there are ways how you check these parameters that are there. There are set about reliability, validity, generalizability, and consistency. And then I go about it taking the right. So not entire set of data I would consider for my analysis. So unwanted things, I set it aside. Culling out the unwanted things is what I call it as editing. Then I start entering my data into Excel sheets or any other tools that I put in. So normally I figure out that male and female or levels of education, income levels and other things there, who belongs to which category. Probably I work out 4 vertical lines and 1 slant. Probably Chandrasekhar is more acquainted with tally there. So you call it at tally marks there. So you figure out what is called as your frequencies. You start putting it into tables. We've all learned it in basic elementary statistics, inclusive, exclusive, different types of tables that are there, open-ended, closed-ended. So once you have done with this job, we have already decided what are our tools of analysis in the research design step. Then we do the interpretation part. Then we do what is called as the report generation and presentation. So at the end, you may go for what is called as viva voce, or you go about with presenting your thesis in the format which is required. So that is where you talk about the thesis, report, or dissertation. Let me get here. I don't want to focus much here, but this is more of theory where people talk of basic research and applied research. It could be descriptive or analytical based on numbers. I told this word exploratory a little while ago. Qualitative or quantitative. Mostly anthropological studies, case studies, and other things there. We use qualitative. Sociology is one department. And when you're talking about numbers, in benchmarking, we say, unless and until something can be quantified and represented in numbers, you can't improve upon. So we're talking about quantification. I'd use that word explanatory and exploratory also. So there could be longitudinal, experimental, evaluate, there could be participatory. It's all theory that you have there. But I said I'm very keen on these 3 words. I already explained it, so I wouldn't spend time on that. And it could again be a repeat what I said about what is the composition of a research design. So your problem of research is in your mind when you are trying to figure out what you want to work out. So there are specific questions which have to be answered or hypothesis to be tested. You got to really figure out the need and importance of the study. You'll have to come out or arrive at the objectives. I find some people writing paras when it comes with writing an objective. It got to be straight, crisp sentences that are there. Probably no breaks in the sentences also. One, that doesn't mean that you write very lengthy sentences with commas and other things. So you'll have to be very clear with your assumptions, concepts, and their operational definitions. So you'll have to tell out about the kind of data collection, that is your primary or secondary, your methods of data collection, the tools that you use. You'll have to be very clear about your gathering information or instruments that you use for that. The tools of analysis, I try telling what is univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. Scope in terms of geography, time, and concepts. And you'll have to be clear as to what is your budget and the time and the kind of people that you would require. And you'll have to work with the time. I like what Stephen Covey says. You'll have to work with your end in your mind. That is very good tool for planning. When you read 7 Effective Habits of Successful People, where he talks about, you've got to work it out with a time frame. And when it comes to collection of data, I spoke about what is primary, secondary. So I wouldn't spend time on that as well. And this is important where you talk about quantitative data, which is basically done through surveys. It involves designing questionnaires. That itself is another thing, only on sampling probably you could spend some quality time. And in a questionnaire design, this is something I wanted you to get to. When you read Naresh Malhotra, I'm not marketing that book, but to tell you that I got some real insights. I have some PhD scholars who come to me and ask me and tell me, sir, check if my questionnaire is right. I ask them, what do you want me to check? The grammar, the sequence, the length of the questions? No, I can't do that. Get me the synopsis. So when they get me the synopsis, what I do is I check if the questions are related with their objectives. If the questions are related with the hypothesis. I said that when these questions are not related, why do you ask it? So maybe I rephrase it, or probably I go about with putting it. And these days, I tell you, it is a must that there were this manual methods with which I used to go about with typing my questionnaire, get it photocopied, go to people, collect data and other things. But these days, the job has become so easy around. There are umpteen number of videos which are put up on YouTube. Probably I have done small courses that are there, how to design through Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, and a lot of other tools that are there. And the type of questions that you ask also, whether it is to do with open-ended or closed-ended. Now, open-ended is you give the question and you leave it to the person, whatever words that he wants to answer, but it becomes very difficult to analyze. Now, when you talk about closed-ended there, it could be a dichotomous, trichotomous, or multiple choice. When I say dichotomous, I'm talking about yes and no, true or false. Or when I say trichotomous, it becomes very difficult when I'm forcing somebody to accept, to say yes or no. So I'm trying to find a path which is between yes and no. And that is where I go about with looking at a DKCS, that is don't know, can't say kind of an option there. A neutral stance is what I go about to take it. Now, when my options are more than 3, I would call it as a multiple choice. And most of us, probably we are not tuned or we don't go about with working much, but we need to get ourselves acquainted even with what is called as this qualitative data, which is based on focus group, where we do in-depth interviews, or we go about with observing, or we use what is called as case studies. To all the teachers are requested, there are a lot of these FDPs which are worked out online these days there through Zoom and other media, where you've got to get yourself acquainted. I tell you, you are a different level of a teacher if you know how to write case studies. Probably what we are accustomed to is we read the text. At the end of the text or with the text, there are some CDs which we are provided with. There are case studies. We get it printed, circulate among the students and discuss. And what if you design your own case studies then? That would be a real contribution to research. Or observation can be mechanical or in-depth or individual that are there. And the precursor for questionnaire design. Now, this is something which I picked again from Naresh Malhotra. I took a screenshot from that. Is classification of what is scaling and measurement that is there. So you'll have to look at, I can't get into talking about each of them, but give you a small example. If I say there is Likert Scale, this is quite often that we use where we talk about from strongly agree to strongly disagree. It is a 5-point scale that we have there. So I have strongly agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. When I talk about a staple scale, it is a 10-point scale. When I talk about semantic differential, I use bipolar words, opposite words, interested, disinterested, like, dislike, love, hate. Now, these kind of words that I use to go about with framing. Now, how does the scaling and measurement help me is, I am trying to convert an opinion into numbers. So this helps me in the process of quantification. So I'll tell you, it is amazing the kind of example that I quoted in Naresh Malhotra that I want you to figure out, looking for what is the scaling and measurement around. And I want you to go about with understanding these basics as well. Now, when we talk about discrete and normal, when I teach theoretical distributions, we say normal distribution is continuous, binomial and Poisson are discrete. And we ask the students, tell me, how do you understand the word binomial? I mean, how do you understand the word discrete and continuous? They go blank. They talk about class intervals and other things. I tell that, or it is an established fact that if you have decimals for the numbers, you talk about continuous. But when it can't have fractions or decimals, you talk about what is called as discrete. And the other one is whether things can be measured and expressed quantitatively. We call it quantitative. And things can be measured quantitatively. So here what you look at in quantitative is we can do finding relationship. We use the word, I find it there given in the next one. For qualitative, or if you're trying to figure out for characteristics, features, relationship, we use the word association. That is where we use the word attribute. But if you can measure and put into numbers, we call it as the variable part of it there, and we use correlation studies. Another thing is not all numbers are prone for analysis. Recently, when we are doing our research methodology workshop, I recollect Krishna Kumar sir, our chairman board of studies, quoting it in his inaugural message. where he said somebody went about with doing an analysis of gender. You get it there? Somebody did an analysis on gender. Can you really do an analysis of gender? Probably you can say someone belongs to male, female, or other gender, LGBT, or any of that. The thing is, someone had taken those numbers of 1-0 for classification and went about with working it there. You can classify it. Probably you can say the entire set so many were there, but they went into some unscrupulous things. Can I analyze roll numbers? Can I analyze hall ticket numbers? Now I ask students, what is the jersey number of Virat Kohli? They get guessing. What is the jersey number of Dhoni? It is 3. For Virat Kohli, it is 18. I tell them that in cricket there are 11 players. So why do I go about with needing an 18th number? There is some sentiment attached to Kohli where he says his father died on that date. So there are numbers which are meant for identification and classification. Now these are called nominal. Now when you start assigning ranks or 1, 2, 3, they denote position. You can't do any analysis based on ranks. And when you talk about a maximum and a minimum value, all that you can do is you can find the difference, you can find that is range, or you can find the average, and you can't do any more things beyond that. But if you can apply all your BODMAS principles, bracket off, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, and if you can do all kinds of arithmetical operation on a given set of data, now that is where we talk about the ratio kind of thing. And most often I'll tell you, when it comes for qualitative, we talk about normal and ordinal. When it comes for quantitative, we talk about interval and ratio. So identifying the numbers will help you in identifying the right choice of tools. But when you fail to identify the nature or the characteristic of the number which you have collected for your research purpose there, you falter with your entire analysis there. And further, when it comes, this is only an example. This is again picked up from Naresh Malhotra, which tells you the nature of the scale, what are the characteristics. I'll just take one example, telling that nominal is meant for identifying and classifying. Where do we commonly use? Probably today we have the Aadhaar card number, probably abroad they call it the social security number, or the jersey number of football players or the cricketers. In marketing, we talk about brand numbers or store types that are there. Now, what kind of statistical tools we use? For descriptive, we say it could be percentage or more. And if it is inferential, probably it is to do with chi-square and binomial. Now, the kind of data is called categorical. Try to get that right there, or nominal. Now look at it when it comes to interval and ratio, how the permissible statistic changes. And for nominal and ordinal, what kind of descriptive statistics are you using there? So I want you to ponder on it a little later. Now classification of variables, this is what I said, qualitative and quantitative there. So you may get ordinal, discrete, and continuous. We already figured out on what is interval and ratio. Now this is one more very important thing. First, I'll have to figure out by speaking to you what is parametric and what is non-parametric. Now, when you are talking about the characteristics of a population, what characteristics? It could be in terms of mean, it could be in terms of standard deviation, it could be in terms of proportion, or it could be in terms of size. When I'm talking about these parameters there, I am looking at what is known as the sample characteristics. If they are there, I use a word called statistic. If there is population characteristic, I call it as a parameter. Very easy to remember. S is for sample, S is for statistic, P is for population, and P is for parameter. Now, there is another thing. When I have to work out what is the choice of tools that I use for research there is quality time that you need to work out. And these days, I'll tell you, I've come across some of the FDPs that have been conducted online, which is only to do with the appropriate choice of tools. Which do you apply? And people leave it to the computer. The computer doesn't have the sense to go about it demarcating to match your kind of data, which type of tools are to be selected. Because that is most of the times you come out with spurious or wrong kind of analysis that you end up with. Now, let me make it very clear here. The basis for, well, this is already known, but probably to the young ones that are there. Now, I have a set of data whose parent population characteristics I know. Now, on this set of data, from that I draw a small sample and I go about with applying statistical tools on it. So the sample I draw from a population whose parent population characteristics I know, On that, if I apply what is called as statistical tools, I call the test to be, or these tests to be, the parametric test. Now I have a sample of data, but I don't know to which parent population it belongs, and I apply the statistical tools on it. Now the test that I know on a sample whose parent population characteristics are unknown, I call it the non-parametric test. And I tell you, most often we end up using parametric test for the convenience data. There are certain characteristic features. If you are using what is called as probabilistic or random sampling tools, most often we say it is to do with a parametric test. But if our data collection or the sampling is based on non-parametric, based on the non-probabilistic or non-random methods, it is most often to do with the non-parametric test. So I've given the list of the various tools that are there. Each one, probably we study it in our masters, or we study it for a part 1 exam, or some do it even at their degree level, UG also there. The thing is, you'll have to look at the choice and other things there. I don't dwell much time on this as well. And this is one thing. Normally, when we're doing hypothesis testing manually, now we talk about what is called as a table value, the critical value, and quite often I ask students questions on what do you call as a type 1 error and what do you call as a type 2 error, and what is known as a power of a test. And one basic question I ask in my research methodology classes is, alpha is about rejecting a hypothesis which is true. You lose an opportunity. Now, beta is about accepting a hypothesis which is wrong. Now, when you look at which is more dangerous, beta is more dangerous. Then the question is, why do you use alpha in decision making? Quite often, students don't even question. And when it comes to alpha, we say take 1% or 5%. What is this alpha? Alpha is to do with the type 1 error. Beta is to do with the type 2 error. And 1 minus beta gives you the power of the test. It tells you how much you are devoid of the type 2 error in your decision making. But I probe, this is something which one of that senior professors once shared in an FDP I attended, Shyam Sundar sir, is no more, from management department at OU. He said we don't start with the premise that a person is criminal and then we go about to proving his innocence. We start with the premise that the person is innocent and then go about with concluding whether he is innocent or criminal. That is the reason we don't use beta for the hypothesis testing. That is one part of it. Now we talk about this 5% and 1%. We talk about level of significance. Now that is to do with the chances of saying, if I say 5%, when I take a decision, I say that I'm devoid of type 1 error, that is the hypothesis being wrong and rejecting it to an extent of 95%. And chances of committing it is 5. If it is 1%, I said chances of not committing the type 1 error is 99 and chances of committing is 1%. But when we use the statistical packages that are there, we talk about what is known as the p-value. Okay, and some talk about sig value. It is nothing but significant level and other things there. If you get a result which is for 1%, and if you get a result which is less than 0.01 for 1%, and I'll stick to this 5% thing there. 5 is 5 divided by 100, 0.05. If you get a value which is less than 0.05, we say the result is not significant, and we go about with do not reject the null hypothesis. But if it is greater, if you look at the symbol, but if it is less than 0.05, we say the result is significant and we reject the null hypothesis. So probably I made a small falter here. I repeat again, if the value that we get is less than 0.05, we say the result is significant and reject the null hypothesis. If we get it this way, we say do not reject the null, greater than 0.05. So you got to work on this part as well then. That is for 1% and 5%. And probably I'll skim through it. I wouldn't spend a lot of time, but these are all software packages. I don't know how many have really explored Microsoft Word, which helps you in organizing your research work in terms of your bibliography, references, and other things there. Some tools I would just mention. There is something which is called as a small CEO tools that are there, which goes about with helping you to check out the plagiarization and other things there. It will help you out to ensure that your work doesn't get rejected. And then there is this Citavi. This is one of the tools which helps you to close down the thinking on dissertation. And you'll definitely appreciate this when you go about. You can search out on net for more details on that. There is something which helps you in paper writing, academic papers and other things, which is called as term paper essay. Canva is another thing which helps you in dissertation writing. It provides you templates and other things there. And Dragon, naturally, this is another thing which is there, which goes about, I wouldn't suggest, but it converts your voice into written part there. And this helps you in paper writing as well. Now, of all these days, there are a lot of workshops which are done on this Mendeley. And even I was watching some YouTube videos on this Mendeley. And what you need to do is, after the course that is there, I want you to spend quality time and figure out how this really helps you in your research. It's an online tool, freely available. You can download it. So I spoke other things at a very less significant way, but I know the importance and the contribution this tool can do in assisting you to write research papers and theses and other things. This is software which helps you to organize your references, documentation, notes, and everything at one place. So this is something which is really useful. I wish that you watch out some YouTube videos and work on that. And this is another tool which helps you to go about with organizing your research work, that is to do with Evernote. Yeah, this is something which is very essential when it comes with figuring out the meanings of words and other things there. Spell checks, you can always try out. And there is this Grammarly.com. I don't know if I've spelled it right. There's also a letter I in the Grammarly.com or something there. It is more to do with checking your grammar and checking your plagiarism also there. There is one more free software which is called as Viper, V-I-P-E-R. It is named after a snake. Even that can be used for testing of what is called as the plagiarism and other things there. So this is something to do with a few tools that I wanted to skim and speak here. I think I've got a little worried with my throat. Now, I just wanted to spend very little time in trying to tell out something on this intellectual property rights, which is called as IPRs. So here it is to do with it protects or the creation that is of your mind. It could include inventions, literary work, artistic work. You know, maybe 2 days from now, I'm doing a program on associating with another institute on something to do with entrepreneurship, IPR, and innovations. But the thing is, I have this thing, and I go along as a resource person for engineering staff college, and I go to various engineering colleges. I make my presentations. What is entrepreneurship? How do you conduct yourself? Where do you get ideas? And how do you work on your ideas and other things there? Then we have a renowned patent attorney by Ashok Kumar sir from Hyderabad. After me, he speaks. I find something amazing. I ask students to come out with their projects, demonstrations. All are away. They don't want to do it. Yes, sir, first let me get it patented. What if anybody in the audience will go about with copying my idea? Wow, I said they are doing some real learning. The thing is, do you know, you have a lot of this project work going on. I have a question, 7 or 8 teachers or PhDs in this group, including me, I would tell you. How many of us have gone about with getting a patent for our thesis? And what if somebody goes about lifting our thesis? These days it is quite convenient. Earlier, when I used to visit the thesis library at OU, the central library, there never is to allow me to go about with photocopy. But today I'll tell you, I've seen students carrying their mobile phones, taking screenshots, and they go about with having devices to convert it. What if somebody converts my hard work and claim that to be theirs? So this is something where you have to focus. So it's a world body apart from WTO, which talks about TRIMS, which is called as WIPO, that goes about looking into the intellectual properties, and especially when it comes for matters of plagiarism. And you can't have 30 continuous words lifted from somebody and prove that to be yours, or claim that to be yours. So you'll have to acknowledge, you'll have to credit. There are some rules that are relevant with that. So you need to really work on that part so that you don't infringe on somebody's copyrights and other things there. And this I'm saying as to how it work out, I don't know much. So I said about that World Intellectual Properties Organization, WIPO, which goes about with controlling it. So as a researcher, you rely on published work to create new hypotheses to support your finding. But you should therefore ensure that you don't infringe into somebody else's copyright. So when you refer to a book, chapter, or research paper, make sure to provide appropriate credit to avoid what is called as plagiarism or plagiarism by using effective paraphrasing. So trying to read and understand and putting it in your own words, summarizing, quoting it when it's required. And look at it, it said that plagiarism is a serious misconduct. So we talk about civil and criminal things there, and it's a matter of time where we could be put behind bars, or we could be barred from academic promotions and other things there when we are caught for what is known as plagiarizing. And it is important to cite the original work in your manuscript. I don't know if somebody has seen it. There are some slides that are there at the bottom with the footnotes. I've gone about with referring from where did I take, or at some places it is even as a header. I've quoted it. So if somebody makes this document public, I shouldn't be caught if somebody says these words are lifted. So I'm skeptical that I shouldn't get into the muddle related with the plagiarism and other things on my part when I'm trying to speak to you. So someone should say that I have infringed on somebody's copyrights and other things there. Now, various thinking skills. I wanted this in the beginning. I said about critical thinking. Now, I don't know, but when I go about with setting papers for our engineering college, unlike the other universities where I set papers for commerce and management department there, they give me the syllabus structure, they give me some sample paper, they give me the blueprint, and that's it. They said, make 2 sets of papers, the job is done. But I tell you, the engineering colleges today, I teach a paper on ethics and corporate governance at our own engineering college at OU there. Now, I find it a little strange, or to the other engineering college also, when I sit there, they say that please follow the Bloom's taxonomy. Now, this is a rough sketch of what the Bloom's taxonomy is all about. So what I go about with noticing is they give a kind of a thing there, how we need to evolve. If you are trying to test somebody, I remember setting a paper from an engineering college, and they reverted the question back to me. I said, what happened? I said, no, you have not used the terms that are related with Bloom's taxonomy. Wow. So the thing is, you'll have to look at the one which is in dark red. So today we are classifying green, orange, and red. Probably green is missing. I'm talking about cream or yellow here. If I'm tasting the basic things for myself, whether it's to do with my understanding, remembering, and recalling skills, I'm going to that orange zone or maroon, what I find here, or colors. I don't know how you would get. Surely I'm not colorblind. But I'm talking about applying and analyzing. This is a little higher than recalling and understanding. But if I'm going a little higher than that, into evaluating and creative kind of thing there, with this highest order. And I don't know if somebody can figure out that word in evaluating towards the end. Critical thinking is the first focus it talks about there. Now, I'm trying to tell there are different types of thinking. There is creative thinking, there's analytical thinking. I wish you do a small homework. Get to a website which is called criticalthinking.org, and you'll get to know what are all the types of thinking. When you talk about everybody's supposed to think in the same direction, you talk about convergent thinking. Or if I look at somebody like Edward de Bono, where he talks about 6 thinking hats, or he talks about lateral thinking or out of the box thinking, that is all to do with divergent thinking. People come with artwork, something you don't imagine. People who are there in interior designing, they do what is called as abstract thinking. But I'll focus on one thing that is there, which is to do with critical thinking a bit later. And this is something which you'll have to work as a teacher when you are teaching as well there. I don't know how things are going to be there in future, because we have all studied history from a point of view wherein we see that it was more about before Christ and after the death of Christ, Anno Domini and before Christ there. But now I'll tell you, this is something which is historical, which is going to happen. I would look at in research before plagiarism has arisen, software tools, and before, after that there. But now I would tell you, when we are trying to evaluate our students and our work that is there, it's got to be before Corona and after Corona. A lot of things have changed. And here, when I look at this World Economic Forum there, I want you to focus a little on, the light blue, dark blue, and the gray colored areas that are there. Look at the areas which are there on the decline, which are the ones which are in trend. But my way of looking at is, you need to really capitalize on your focus on growing. I said I teach one complete paper on this aspect called critical thinking. You need to figure out for yourself understand what are the requirements, what are the ingredients, what are the demands, and how you need to inculcate and develop in yourself what is called as analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving. This is very essential in corporate world. Critical thinking. I said you're not criticizing others, but you're trying to you become your own critic through a set of values and filters, and you come out with better ideas. You involve an active learning, creativity. This is very important when you talk about original work to come out of research papers and theses. There, you take initiatives. You have eye for details, which is very important. There are some times when you sit in Viva or somebody evaluates your thesis, they have noticed something which you have noticed, not noticed. So that is because they have attention for details. You will have to develop that quality of understanding the finer nuances. You have to develop that element of trustworthiness. The journey gets ahead unless and until you develop that element of trust between you and the librarian, you and your guide, and you and your dean, and other things there. So that's something to do with trustworthiness. When I said about EQ, which is very important, how do you work, and reasoning, problem solving, leadership, social influence, time management. That is what we said earlier. So these are the watchwords that I want you to look for. And critical thinking, if it is the ability to think clearly. We started with the word rationality in the beginning, understanding, logical connection between ideas. Critical thinking has been the subject of much debate and thought since the time of early Greek philosophers. It talks about, I don't think I've included Socrates and Alexander also there, but it talks about Socrates, Plato, and all these people, how they went about with the reasoning and coming with ideas. Remember what I said about inside out approach. Socrates always went about with asking questions, and the one question led to the other question, how things work out. You'll have to really look at, if you get to that criticalthinking.org, it tells about how these people were the pioneers for this critical thinking. And today it is again coming into renewed essence because most of the products are becoming obsolete, the processes are getting obsolete. How do you go about with working? So in essence, critical thinking requires you to use your ability to reason. It is about being an active learner rather than a passive recipient of information. And it is all about understanding the link between ideas, the critical thinking. It determines the importance and relevance of arguments and ideas. It helps you to recognize, build, and appraise arguments. It helps you to identify inconsistencies and errors in reasoning. It helps you to approach problems in consistent and systematic way. It helps you to reflect on the justification of the assumptions, beliefs, and values that you have there. And this is the crux. If somebody says this is your contribution, this is your understanding of research, you need the basic elements of critical thinking there. Now, very quickly, we'll spend little time on what are these guidelines to be followed while writing. Simple rules that we have there. Make it a driving force. I said about you publish or you perish there. So you talk about writing a paper, you'll have to understand the underlying research which is required to do it. It is about understanding more and more about less and less. The more you have in the later part, you pick the right audience to whom you're actually addressing your thing. The choice of words, your narration, and everything is important there. You've got to be logical in your work. You've got to be thorough in your work. It's got to be complete, make sense. It's got to be concise and crisp there. You have your style of presenting things there. You've got to be your own judge. And this is something even Warren Buffett talks. Test the water in your own backyard. So you do what is called as trying to figure out with your own people before you make it public there. And this is something which happens with that Mendeley and other tools where you start creating virtual teams, which helps you to collaborate your work. And this is something which is not rocket science, but we have teachers, learned professors and others talking about paper presentations. They get it outsourced. But I tell you that if you can master the American Psychologists Association or Modern Language Association, Harvard style or Chicago style, a lot of those things that are there, but it is something which is going to be lifelong asset of yours. It becomes so easy for you to quote, the rules that are required for acknowledging if you've taken something from a newspaper, from a journal, from a speech, from a lecture, from a TV show. There are different ways that you quote it. So these rules, if you apply, you're making your bibliography and reference section and you avoid plagiarism. So this is something which you need to really master. And every journal or every publication have their own rules and you have to fine tune or mold yourself according to them. And we'll just look at some do's and don'ts of submitting research papers. And you need to do's if it comes to, you need to communicate your ideas very clearly and precisely. It shouldn't be muddled. If you yourself, you're confused, you're making your readers to be much more confused. You're trying to tell your readers about your novel research. Okay. You're trying to tell them about your novel research, something new part of it there. You're trying to highlight the ideas and methods used in research to justify your research with specific reasons. You always, I'm getting right. You're trying to talk about justifying your work with specific reasons. You will verify the accuracy and correctness of your data that you present. I told this watchword like consistency, reliability, validity, and generalizability. This is important because your work may be the basis of future research. I said about scope for further research. That is where somebody had put a full stop, you put a comma, and continue from there. And the other thing is you make sure that whatever information you present, the readers are able to form a right and thorough conception of the topic in all aspects, and you perform a thorough literature research from trustworthy, and you keep yourself appraised or updated with up-to-date information there. And few more tools we look in. You test your research information from aspects of reliability. Can you believe it? Right? It is credible. And you present it with ample analysis and logic to show how your work conveys and supports your research. That is the justification part of it there. You provide solid empirical evidence to suffice and support arguments in favor of your findings. And I always tell it, when you write the thesis or when you're trying to report, there got to be a link between your objective hypothesis, the type of data you've collected, and the kind of conclusions. When I go for vivas, I ask students that you have this finding, from where did you arrive? We don't expect you to give general conclusions or findings which are there in the textbooks. Your findings, this is the watchword that I have learned it from my senior research teachers and others. They say that it got to emanate from your findings. So you don't claim somebody else's findings to be your findings. So that is essential. So cite the reference appropriately. That is where I was trying to talk in terms of MLA, APA styles a little earlier. So mark your notes. Remember where you took the information from. So when you collect data, this is most of the times as novices, I would have done it myself. I collect somewhere a piece of paper cutting, but I failed to write what was the date, which page number, and which was the author of it. So now I made it cautious that if I cut a paper or a clipping there, I diligently go about writing and cutting it so that when I quote it, my job becomes easier and I'm not caught for plagiarism. Now, the other thing is proofreading of the paper several times. And sometimes two heads are better than one. When we go about saying, what we find is what you feel is right, somebody goes about with finding that as a mistake. So it's always nice. Some people go about with coming with what is known as the work related with errors. Oh, I tell you, don't mistake me. I have a lot of these teachers these days who have done MA English and Telugu medium. Sounds funny, right? But I tell you, you need somebody who's good with language skills to correct your thesis so that it is devoid of grammatical. And I tell students, if you get spelling mistakes, it's like you taking a tight slap with your own hand. So you got to avoid those part of it. I didn't get more into that writing part of it. So proofreading is very important. And then you come to the final draft. Now let's get to one or two slides and wind up. That's to do with the don'ts that are there. So you do not misinterpret any information in the paper. You don't include anything that doesn't answer the question. So overtly trying to extrapolate is wrong. You don't add any unnecessary details. Keep it relevant and to the point. Don't give incomplete and absurd reasons for doing research. Don't exceed the recommended word limit. So we talk about even the number of pages as to 350 or so there. And do not make many generalizations in the paper. Have your own voice in writing the paper. A paper full of overviews gives an impression that you have nothing to say. So you need to work on that. And then don't write for the sake of writing, just for the heck of writing. Make sure that each of your findings support the cause. Don't forget to reference any supporting material or related research by other prominent. This is about acknowledging, working out your bibliography and references. Now, this is something which most often people do. Wikipedia is not a reliable source to work your references. I don't know how many really know. The academicians found a lot of flaws with our finance minister when she made a budget speech, not the present thing which is to do with Atmanirbhar, but when it to do with the budget speech, she was quoting Wikipedia, and people said that is not a reliable source. Anybody can add, delete from it. How do you take that as the basis that is there? So better be careful. I'm not finding fault with anyone, but we have been naive at times using what is called as Wikipedia. We need to avoid that. And do not use others' work without rephrasing, that is paraphrasing with the apt sentences. So that's it. Before I even go for the Q&A, I thought I will just reiterate what I went about with saying, what my young friend Naveen and Revati ma'am and others had gone about with asking me to share in this. I spoke about the foundations of research, told you the tools that are used for identification and formulation of the problem, what constitutes the research design. Methods, I didn't do it, but I said you got to read that Naresh Malhotra. Tools for research, I skimmed through. Concepts of intellectual property, I just gave a bare skeleton of it. Various thinking skills, I provoked you to read a lot on that. Guidelines on to be followed while writing a research paper, do's and don'ts. I went strictly according to what was asked me to speak in the invitation letter that was given by the college there. So before I even close, I thank Revati ma'am, Naveen, Saida, Athiya, Chandrasekhar, and all others, the entire team of IQAC and the college who are there, who have gone about with giving me an opportunity to present my ideas on this forum there. And this PPT will be shared by you. And I find excellent work that is done, wherein I think there were around about 250 odd audience that you had there. And there were many towards the end trying to intrude as well. And some who left made way for others who wanted to come in. But the thing is, you're pretty clear that they asked you to fill up a feedback form and other things before you wind up. And I think that's it from my side there. I would go about with asking you to ask me any questions that are there, then I would go ahead. Yeah, I think it's that slide which is put forth by the organizers. Even I said Q&A, but I find some guys with Q&A.
Hello,
Right.
sir.
Yeah, ma.
Hello.
Yes, yes, I
Sir,
can.
please name the tools of the tools again. I want.
You want me to speak about the tools of analysis there, ma?
Yes, sir. Name of the
You,
tools.
you talk about
Sir,
parametric.
before Canava, Mendeley, and sir, before
Okay,
this.
okay. No. What I would do is, I have shared this entire PPT with Naveen, sir, who is the one of the senior faculties with this. He will share it to you, and I think
Sir,
you pick up the tools. You pick up the tools and start exploring it.
okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
And out of that, I tell you what is more crucial is mentally. So work on that.
Okay, sir.
Right. Any more questions that I can take?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
I think you can come live with your video on and even your voice
Hello.
done. I don't know about the. Yes, sir. I can hear you loud and clear. Go with your question there.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Myself, Krishna Mohan, sir. I'm from Krishna University. I think I just want you to express your opinion regarding selecting a journal. So nowadays we are coming across so many different types of journals, sir, like Scopus Indexed, Elsevier, Whaley, like this. And we also come across, as we are academicians, we need to think of UGC care journals and UGC approved journals, all are there. And the list is being made dynamic, all the journals. So I wish if you express your opinion in selecting a journal, sir.
Yes. Now I would tell it this way to you, sir. When it comes for us, I just said, to seek admission into PhD and other things also, then you have to give weightage to the candidate for the kind of papers that they have published and have produced there. We give more weightage to the ones which are UGC recognized. I mean, that is the job. The dean goes about with giving the list. There are 400 applicants, 100 is given to me, 300 is divided to 100 to each of my colleagues there. And what we do is we scrutinize the application. And it is a thorough job. And again, it is scrutinized by the head and chairman, and the report is put in front of the dean there. And the same thing is done. I'm due for my promotion. So in the due course from the assistant to the associate or associate to the professor, my publications that are there are scrutinized at the departmental level. And they ensure, they ask whether it is a recognized journal, it is an unrecognized journal. They look at a lot of other things like impact factor, whether it's UGC recognized, scope is recognized, and other things there. And I wish that you do your work in UGC recognized, and the kind of weightage that you get in ABDC or Scopus and other things is far greater. And let me tell you, sir, when it comes for university jobs, or let us say for a junior lecturer or a degree college lecturer and other things there, when you have your publications in some of the leading journals, doctorate, anybody is there with that, but these publications are given more weightage for promotions and for career choices. I think I've answered you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
On the chat box, we will surely take one after the other. One participant is asking you, sir, could you please throw some light on Garrett ranking technique?
Which one, ma'am?
Throwing some light on the Garrett ranking technique.
Now, I think it would be nice of telling that.
Ma'am?
I'm ignorant about that tool. I have not come across it. There are a lot of these tools which come in eViews and advanced tools that are there, and SAS and SPS is there. I wouldn't go about with banging around the bush and prove my ignorance. I say that I'm not familiar. Good for raising it. Probably I'll go about with getting myself acquainted with an answer for that question. Thank you for raising it.
Another question.
Select a topic there.
Sir, there's another question which asks you, can you please give examples on leading journals?
Yeah, ma'am. Now, when it comes to, let us say, there is one from IIM Ahmedabad, which is called as Vikalpa, right? Let us say most of the IIMs have their own in-house journals that are there. And there are a lot of these colleges which are IITs which have the schools of management. So when it is recognized, where the impact factor is high, where people go about with quoting it, and it has been listed as some of the premier journals by UGC in categories of A, B, C, D, or whatever that they do there, then we talk about what is called as the leading journals.
Thank you, sir. Another participant asks you the question, what is CAS and how you calculate it?
This is for career advancement schemes there, if I'm apt. Now, you have the UGC guidelines that are there. You have a self-appraisal points that are there, wherein how you work out for your publications, for your lectures, the number of books you have published, or number of e-material. These days, a lot of weightage is given. If you have got, when they introduced me, they told that I have done some MOOC lessons which are put on YouTube. This was for Sant Gadge Baba University in Amravati. So today with Corona, it's become very pertinent when you're talking about what is called as the aspect of e-tools that you use for teaching. So there are marks. When I go for guest lecture these days, I make it a point. Maybe I've done this training program. I will pester Revati ma'am and Naveen. Give me a letter as a proof that I've conducted this webinar for you all there. And tomorrow, when I go about with filing my, no, I know that. When I go about with filing my report for my CV for the next level of promotion, I insert all these letters. And that is cross-checked with what I write in my CV. I write the date, topic, and other things there. And I show the evidence as well there. So you've got to be very much careful in collecting all this evidence. There were times that people used to call me for a lecture. I just give it. Don't even bother to ask a letter. So you have to really go about with giving importance to documentation there and keep everything in order. So that is very crucial when it comes from the CAS part of it. As for the points there, detailedly they are worked out for guest lectures, for publications, the kind of journal, the level of journal, how many marks are to be awarded, what is the weightage. I think that is available on the UGC's website.
So there's another question. For reviewing the literature from journals or any papers, should they be with impact factor for mentioning them in the thesis?
I think if you can take it from some of the recognized journals there, that will suffice. Impact factor goes about with working more for the publisher. I mean, the one who has written that article, if it comes in that particular journal, it gives more weightage. And I tell you, I don't want to speak the negatives of it there. There are ways how people circumvent the impact factor, how they circumvent even the plagiarism rules also there. But the thing is, if it is a recognized journal, that is more than enough that you quote in your work.
So one more question. One of the participants asks you to suggest some websites for plagiarism checker.
Okay. I'm not getting it immediately in my mind what we do in our university here. In the library sciences, we have Chakravarti sir. And I mentioned one in the beginning there, grammarly.com, not just checks your grammar, but also does that plagiarism. Another thing I've told you is a free software that is called a Viper, V-I-P-E-R. Sounds like the name of a snake that you have there. Now that is again a free source which goes about with testing the thing. I'm trying a little hard to recollect the tool that we use in our university to test. But there are a lot of tools which are available, and a few are highly paid and expensive as well. And all I do to my friend is the students who are doing research under me, the PhD part there, they send me the draft. I send it to the library science. They apply it in the software and they come out with the percentages, red, blue, different colors telling that. And we have a norm wherein it says if it is about 25%, then we say that you'll have to make changes. If it is below 25%, and some universities they have a norm of 10%, or they're most stringent, talking even about 5% and 1%.
Thank you, sir. There's one question from the participant asking you how to select a topic and how to start it.
I think I did it in the beginning there. Where do you get your idea?
Yes, but the participant wishes that you answer her, so I'm
Oh,
requesting you.
I don't mind telling it again there. But the thing is, I said about reading newspapers. I told about reading research articles. Now just look at what is your area of interest. Somehow when I was studying my master's, I was fascinated with the subject of marketing. The way my teacher had spoke and other things there. Though I would have scored more in finance, I would have got 86 in that and 80 in marketing. But the thing is, I had a fascination for marketing. And I said, if I have to do something, it has to be in this area. And when I had to do my research also, when I had been to MDI Gurgaon, I said I want to do in the area of CRM. I was rejected. People said, you're from MCOM, you're not from MBA. How many papers of marketing did you study? And what is your level of proficiency that you want to do PhD in area of marketing? But the thing is, you'll have to have a kind of liking. I was answering one of the quiz questions these days. People said it should be personally relevant or social relevant. When they fund your projects, when you get money from UGC or different other funding agencies there, they look for what is called as social relevance. Based on the social relevance, they go about with funding your research. But if you are forced to talk, sometimes students come to me and say, sir, give me a project idea. PhD student says, sir, tell me an area in which I have to work. I'll tell you, I'll give an idea which I like and not what you're going to like. If I force upon it, you are bound with a lot of constraints. You don't have your heart, soul, mind, and body working on it. So it has to come from within you. It has to be something that you'll have to eat, drink, and sleep. You'll have to breathe it. So if somebody goes about it asking me about my research there, I think if people are willing another 3 hours, I can speak about it. Because I know the kind of effort that I went for 4 years with my research there. So it's something which I'm fascinated, or I really love my topic kind of a thing. Now, if you have to go about with developing, you'll have to understand few things, and I always tell it in my class. Figure out what your purpose in life is. What is your calling? What are you cut out? Know what is your passion all about. And then figure out what is your potential. Not everybody's potential is the same. And you need a plan. You always say that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's like bail mujhe maar. So you'll have to go about working out on your plan. And you need to work hard. That is perseverance. Nothing comes easy in this world. And I always tell it to the students. When you know what is your calling in life, that is your purpose in life, you know your passion, you know your potential, you have your plan, and you work hard, that is what decides your profession. So the thing is, when you're choosing your topic, ask for what is your calling. You get it there? What area? And can you really put yourself, immerse yourself? Go about with doing extensive literature review. I tell you, when you look at limitations and scope for further research in somebody's work, now that will spark ideas. Somebody has put a full stop there and you're trying to continue from there. Are you getting it there? So there are ways, sources that you look at somebody else's work. I tell my students, there is another way of trying to get ideas, which is called as a replication study. There is a study which is done in Sweden, which talks about the working of metro rail. There is a questionnaire. There is one website which is called as projectparadise.com. You type in that, it gives you the entire project report. Now, I'm not asking the student copy that report where ready-made questionnaire, literature, everything is available. I said in Stockholm, they did this metro rail study. Now, if you can compare the metro rail already there in Kolkata and Bangalore and Delhi, or upcoming in Chennai or in Hyderabad, where you have access to data, conduct it here and look at the variables of culture and various other things there. Make a comparison between what is done in Stockholm to what you have in Hyderabad. Now, this is not called copying. This is called as replication study. Are you getting it there? So students tend to copy their seniors' project. I said, take their project, but don't copy the contents. Look for limitations. Look for scope for further research. From that, you get ideas and continue. That is where the research cycle continues and you add to the existing knowledge. At the end, it is you and you alone will have to answer the question, what is your contribution? What is your originality? What is new about what you found there? So before you start your work, when you're willing to answer this question, you're crystal clear. How do you choose your topic?
Thank you, sir, for patiently answering to all the questions posed by our participants. I now request Mrs. Athiya to take over and propose the vote of thanks and close the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful session and valuable inputs. We have lots of takeaways today for this session as it undisclosed many fears and myths related to research writing. And it has given us a lot of enlightenment, a detailed session with a pinch of humor, and it has given us an immense boost to sharpen the writing skills and take a deep plunge to research methodology. On behalf of the Villamari Degree College for Women and the IQAC team, I wish to propose a vote of thanks to all the attendees present here. My congenial thanks to Dr. Philomena ma'am, who has been the penchant of education and a guiding force. I also thank Mrs. Revati Devi Mathur for her untiring support and guidance overloaded. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our keynote speaker today, Dr. A. Patrick. Thank you, sir, for investing your valuable time and obliging to our webinar. A big appreciation and thanks to all the attendees who have been patient listeners throughout. Thank you for your overwhelming participation. Last but not the least, applause to the team IQAC, whose effective teamwork helped us craft this fruitful session. Your opinion matters to us so that we implement and come back better. I request Mr. Chandrasekhar sir to share the link for the submission of feedback forms. Please follow the link to submit the feedback forms and be ensured that your submission of the feedback form confirms your e-certificate. Certificates will reach you within a week. If there are any queries related to the certificate, please drop a mail to the technical team after 1 week. And for further queries, please reach us at iqacvmdc@gmail.com. The information is also available on the screen as well. Until then, stay safe, stay calm. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. वो टाइम पे अटक गया था.
Madam, Madam, link will be?
It is on the screen, ma'am.
Madam, on the screen, how can we do? Can we send WhatsApp or like that?
It will be forwarded in the Telegram group. The details are on the screen. The feedback form link will be active on the chat box and on the Telegram group for 1 hour only.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, can I have your attention, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The link provided in the PPT and the link provided in the chat box is different. And earlier also one more link has been provided in the chat box. I don't know, 3-4 links have been displayed. Which one we have to use?
Sir, the link which was provided earlier was
fake link, ma'am.
Sorry, ma'am, can you repeat once again?
Sir, the link which was provided earlier was the meeting link, the link which gives access to the meeting. Now the link what you see on the screen, the similar link is forwarded in the Telegram group as well.
Okay.
You
Now
have
in the
two
chat
options.
box, one more link is there by Mr. Chandrasekhar and Mr. Naveen. Shall we go forward with that link?
So see the similar link which is there on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Follow
You can
the
go
same
with
link,
that.
sir. Follow
The
this
link which
link,
is
sir.
sent by Mr. Naveen Kumar sir and myself Chandrasekhar. You can go with that. It ends with XA, EGXA.
Yeah, because in the PPT it is showing different link. That is what is my query. That is having some doubt.
No.
Okay, sir,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
go
Please
with
go
that.
ahead with
Thank
that
you.
link. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very
Excuse
much.
me. Sir, can you please?
Hello, madam. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you
Hello,
please send the telegram?
can I log out, madam, now?
Yes, if you have taken the feedback form and if you have duly filled in, you can log out, sir. You will be receiving the e-certificate in a week's time.
Can you
Thank you.
please send the telegram?
When will get?
You will be receiving the e-certificate on your mail within a week's
Sorry to
time, sir.
by mistake I posted the link.
Okay.
Sorry to everyone.
Can you please send the telegram link, ma'am? I can.
We are unable to click on the link actually.
Can you please send the telegram link?
The Telegram link was already forwarded to the participants who had registered for the webinar, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Revati, Sunila here.
Yes, Sunila.
Revati, how do we send the feedback? Because that is on the screen, right?
The feedback form link is put in the chat box. You can click on the link which is put in the chat box and the feedback form opens for you to fill up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But on my screen it is not showing. Excuse me, ma'am. Hello.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
But on my screen the link is not. My screen got hand up, so I'm unable to complete the feedback form. Not the link is.
Okay, the link will also be put in the Telegram group, but the feedback form link will only be active for 1 hour, ma'am. So you can open your feedback, you can open the feedback form through your Telegram group and fill the form.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, see my window. I submitted the feedback form. Thank you for organizing, ma'am. It's a very nice session and informative, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your
Yeah,
appreciation matters a lot to us. Thank you so much.
yeah. When I can get that my certificate?
You will be receiving the certificate in a week's time, ma'am.
Okay, through mail.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam, just now.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Yes, sir.
So, madam, just now I given feedback and I got certificate.
Okay.